Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. And on today's episode of the Obsidian Nights podcast, I'm going to be diving deep into Arya 2 of A Game of Thrones, and I'm joined by sweet summer family member Pancho Jack. What's going on? I'm glad you could make it. Would you like to tell the sweet summer family who you are and where they can find you?
Yes. So my real name's Alpha, Alpha. A lot of people say it's pretty cool. I think it is. But you can follow me at Pancho Ba1 on Twitter. I don't have that many followers, and I don't even post that much either. So I don't know what people will get out of that. But
no, a Song of Ice and Fire tweets.
It kind of I dialed that back since season 8.
Yeah.
Kind of moved on. But I'm huge into basketball, so I'm like really into NBA Twitter.
Okay.
Kind of into politics too. So if you don't like that, probably don't show up. Yeah, but generally, I just like a lot of stuff and retweet stuff, and then I just tweet my own stuff. So that's basically what I do on Twitter. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So, but you're a big Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire fan?
Yes, I am. I started out with the TV show first, so I didn't read the books yet. And I can't remember when I started watching it, but I got instantly hooked. And then when I found out there was a book series, I'm like, hold up, why didn't I read that yet? So, while I was in college, my first year of college, so I just went to the library, got the first book, and it was kind of similar to the first season that I watched, but not so similar. Like there was so much more detail, and I really, really liked that. As somebody who liked the show, I'm like, wow, this is everything you could ask for. There's way more detail. There's more characters. Everything is much more fuller.
Yeah.
And I've always read a lot of books too, so it was right up my lane.
Yeah, so. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. It's probably it has to be my favorite book. Like I always talk about different book series, like, oh, that's my favorite. Oh, that's my favorite. But like my true favorite is A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's just because the world building, I feel, is just so good. Like it's you get immersed in it.
Right. And I think the thing that captivated me the most was the character work. Like it was so weird how like the show, I could see the characters from the show in the book, but then almost in the same way that I can actually like see them. Like it was just so mind-blowing to me just how much detail and how different each chapter sounded. It was just so amazing to me. Like he actually like went into the minds of these characters and he's writing the way that they would see the world. And it was just so incredible to me. And then like you said, the world building that's like my cup of tea because I've read Harry Potter and all that, and world building is always something that captivates me. So I'm huge into fantasy anyways. So, I've started reading like Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time.
Uh-huh. How do you like that?
Oh, it's great. It's so good.
Okay. I keep getting recommended it. People keep recommending it to me, and I like looked it up, and I was like, it's like 13 books.
Yeah, it is ginormous, and I had to take a break because right now I'm not reading any books because I read like the first like 5 or 6 basically back to back, and I'm like, you know what, I gotta rest. This is just too much.
Right.
It's the world building in this series is just amazing. The cultures, the amount of like different people that are involved, the magic system too is just so good. Like it's one of the most detailed that I've ever read in any fantasy series, and it's actually
I gotta check
that I
that
would
out.
love. Yeah,
gotta check that out.
it's amazing. And you feel like want like any content on it, Daniel Green on YouTube, he's super
Awesome.
into it. Yeah, he's really good with that.
I'll check it out. So, in Game of Thrones, is Arya your favorite character?
Yes. Funny enough, it used to be Jon Snow. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but I kind of don't like Jon Snow anymore. Just too whatever to me. Like, yeah, but I think my favorite characters would have to be Sansa, Tyrion, and maybe hmm, Daenerys. Like her
Daenerys.
journey in Essos is, I really enjoy that in the books. Because
I love her.
right, a nice change of scenery, seeing her and her come up and all the mistakes that she makes. It's
Yeah.
a really, really fascinating character.
Just getting to be in Essos, period. It makes her chapters better than most of the other ones. Like
Right,
most of the, I'd rather be in Essos because it's so much mystery over there, and we're getting to see the East through her eyes.
right. And the Dothraki and are
Yeah.
fascinating. Like love the Dothraki, you know, all the free cities. It's just so much rich
Mm-hmm.
details, and
Yeah.
that's what I like a lot in a book series. So
Yeah, that's why Arya is one of my favorite book characters, because her chapters in Bravos are some of my favorite chapters. Like a Feast for Crows for me is probably the best book.
thank you. I've been saying this so many. I don't know why people just don't like. I just love A Feast for Crows, and it's like the title fits the plotting. Everything in there is just so good. The chapters I really love. I think Feast for Crows is probably my favorite too.
It is like those Cersei chapters, Brienne, Samwell Tarly on the Cinnamon Wind, Maester Aemon, like all of that stuff. Jamie's chapters, like Arya and Bravos. I can't think of anything bad about A Feast for Crows. And then you get the Dorne stuff.
Right, right. During a new change of pace. I also like the consequences of the War of the Five Kings. Like it's just like you need to see that because I think if George R. Martin, if he didn't hone in on that, the consequences of this war,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the same. Like it wouldn't be the darkness, the character development, all of that would be missed because yeah, this huge war happened and we have to know what were the consequences and how it affected each and every character. And some of the most interesting characters are all in this book. So
Yeah.
right.
And it's like I think, you know what? I think a lot of people don't like it because it doesn't have a John or a Danny POV in it. And I think it was kind of like bitterness towards like the book from the book fans because they had waited a long time, I guess, between Storm of Swords and A Feast for Crows. So, and they expected these John chapters and stuff, but then it got split up into two books. So supposedly A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons was one book that got split into two.
Wow. That would have been a ginormous book.
Right.
Wow.
So that's what I'm thinking Winds of Winter. That's what I think is going to happen with Winds of Winter.
Yeah.
There's going to be like a book similar to A Feast for Crows that doesn't have the big POVs that all of the big POVs like John and Danny, which would be crazy.
Yeah, but I love the side characters. Like sometimes the lead characters are nice and they're cool, but let's get into more areas. That's
Yeah.
always my thing. You know?
Yeah. Davos is a really good POV. I really like Davos's POV. We get to see all that Stannis stuff through him and the Stormlands and White Harbor and all that kind of stuff. But today we're going to be talking about Arya 2 of A Game of Thrones. So Arya 2 is jam-packed with lots of juice. There are like literal things happening, symbolic things happening. You really get into the mind of Arya Stark, and you kind of can like see the beginning of her arc. One thing a lot of these characters, Arya, Jon, Dany, Bran, they're all kind of alone. They always have people around them, but they all deal with like that second kind of loneliness, like being lonely in a crowded room, which is how this chapter opens up with Arya. Like Arya is at dinner with the men that she's grown up around, her father's guards, her father, Jory, Sansa, Septa Mordane, all of the House Stark people. And they're all talking about the tourney of the hand. And Arya knows that Ned hates it, which Arya is really like an observant child. Like, I always say this about Arya. She knew Joffrey was a piece of shit from the moment that she met him.
Day one.
Day one.
Right.
She reads people really well.
Right. That's like one of her defining traits, I think. The way that she reads a room, the way that she reads people. And you know, like the way that this chapter opens, like you said, we see her alone, but there's all these people here. But I think the things that are bothering her the most are the fact that her father is not there yet. So, you know, her father walks in late, you know, because he's now the hand of the king, and he doesn't spend as much time with them because he has all these duties. But, you know, she also misses, you know, Bran and Rickon and Jon especially. Her connection with Jon Jon Snow is pretty tight. I think more than any other sibling that she has. And then she's kind of stuck with Sansa, and they're still beefing. They're still beefing. So she's like, yeah, I'm left with Sansa. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, so she's upset about that. But one thing that, and I love this about Arya, one thing that she did in this chapter was she's talking about all the men that, like, the master at arms, the captain of the guards, like she's naming all these people, and she's like, they all were running their mouth, but when it came down to it, they didn't do anything. So she's like, Fat Tom was there, and she's talking about the butcher boy being killed, and those men that she thought would protect her not being able to protect her, not doing anything. And she's like, Fat Tom, who always ran his mouth so much, didn't do anything. They just stood there and let it happen. And she said, like, even her father let it happen. So she's getting, like, introduced to the South really in a harsh way, like her and Sansa coming down, the whole lady situation, the Joffrey situation, and then Arya blames herself for the butcher's boy dying.
Right. Talk about a traumatic experience at a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Just brutal stuff. But I think it's part of her, you know, she's very clever and she's very smart. And it's her introduction to how you really can depend on even the people that you love the most, the people that you think are going to be there for you. You really can depend on them. And especially in this setting they are in, you know, in King's Landing, because Ned even told them, we're going to a very dangerous place. And I think she's starting to realize that more and more with, you know, how the butcher's boy, how he was just brutally killed. And, you know, it's pretty unsettling. And it's so unsettling that she doesn't even want to eat food. She's just, you know, looking at everybody like, I don't even want to be here. She just storms out.
Yeah.
She storms out. And, you know, lady, what's her name?
Septa Mordane.
Yeah, Septa Mordane trying to, like, tell her, come back for your food. And she's like, y'all don't got to listen to you.
Right.
She just goes up in her room, locks the door, and I think Big Tom or Fat Tom.
Yeah, Fat Tom.
Fat Tom, right? Yeah. He comes up to the door and he's like, you know, open the door. And he's like, and she's like, yeah, nobody's in here. And he just walks away.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, he was always an idiot.
I mean, she was just talking about all of them, like, they didn't do anything. And you're right, she's realizing, like, she's getting the depth of King's Landing and how out of their element they are. And I talked about this previously about Arya and Sansa always being like the little prince and the little princesses of Winterfell, even though they weren't technically princesses. But then they get thrust into this life where there are people above them and they're not used to it. So, and I feel like Sansa is adjusting a lot easier than Arya is. Sansa's like excited for the tournament. Arya is like, I don't care about the tournament. I don't care about Prince Joffrey. Like, I don't care about anything. And Sansa's just like, ooh, a tournament, so splendid. I can't wait. I can't wait to go. And it's like they're both handling their grief a little differently. But there's like some foreshadowing, I think, for Arya in this chapter. And it's when she says, first of all, she has all those names that she goes over. Arya Horseface, what was it? Arya Horseface, Arya Underfoot. It's like it's a couple different names. So all those different names that she has could indicate that she's gonna wear multiple names, and we know that she does do that in Bravos. When she says she'll run away.
Oh, she would go out the window and down the tower, run away from this horrible place, away from Sansa and Septim Ordain and Joffrey. Is that?
Yeah. And that's kind of like what happens to Arya. Like she runs away with nothing but her saddlebag, just her on the King's Road. Like she's the only Stark, like she's the lone wolf that they talk about in the Stark pack. And that's what she does. And that's what Nymeria kind of does in the Riverlands, like just goes off on her own, and Arya kind of goes off on her own. So I think there is some foreshadowing a little bit there with that.
Yeah. Definitely. The way that she wants to just open the window and just skedaddle and just leave everyone, because, you know, she has that tendency to just keep on moving because she knows that, you know, she doesn't like being here in King's Landing. She finds it terrible. She doesn't enjoy it like Sansa does. And that's why she doesn't do it, because, you know, Ned knocks on the door. And the conversation between them I just found so fascinating. But I think the dialogue in this chapter was just clutch, like A+.
Yes.
I just love the dialogue. Like it's just so snappy, and it just shows how really good George R.R. Martin is with his dialogue. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it shows like the dialogue between Arya and Ned is very different than the dialogue between Sansa and Ned. And I feel like if you've heard of the Girls Gone Canon podcast, I had them on an episode of Overwatch, and they were like, shout out to Chloe and Eliana. they were saying that Ned has a better relationship with Arya because Ned relates Arya to the things that he loves, like Lyanna and Winterfell and all of that. And he relates Sansa to the South, like the Southern ways. And like they have like a disconnect. Ned and Sansa have a disconnect where Arya and Ned are kind of on the same page.
Yeah, and I think it kind of plays into the Jon Snow thing. Like how, you know, Ned and Catelyn, there's just Jon Snow is in between them. And similarly, Sansa really does not have a high opinion of Jon Snow like Arya does.
Yes.
Right? It is just super interesting, but I just love the tiny bits that are in the dialogue. Like he's like, you know, you have a wildness in you, child. You know,
yes.
The wolf blood. And I'm like, that's a bit on the nose there, George. And he's like, and then he compares it to Lyanna. And I love when he says this, you can see that he's reminiscing. Like he's going
Yes.
back to the time and he's remembering, and he's kind of sad too. Like the way that he remembers all this. And
Oh,
he's like,
yeah.
right? And he's like, Lyanna might have carried a sword if my lord father had allowed it. You remind me of her sometimes. You even look like her. Like, and that's what he says when he sees her with Needle. And it just speaks to how much he's also hiding a lot of pain. Like he's
Yeah. Oh,
got a
yeah.
lot of grief.
Yeah, Ned Stark, Jesus. I mean, can you imagine, like, he's this warrior. I'll call him, like, he's this lord, this great lord, this warrior. But the Robert's rebellion cost him so much. Like, he lost his sister, he lost his brother, and he lost his father. He had to get married. He came home a dad with a new wife, and he's now a lord of a castle, and he never thought he would be that. Well, not Lord of Winterfell, at least. So he has to deal with all of that. And then, like, if whatever, I don't really know what happened at the Tower of Joy, but if he killed Sir Arthur Dayne and it wasn't an honorable thing, he's dealing with that. He has to raise his sister's kid as his kid for fear that he might die. So yeah, the war cost him a lot, and he's haunted by that.
Yeah, yeah. And you kind of feel for him in this chapter. The way that I saw it.
Oh, of
And
course,
it's
like when he's talking about the tourney.
right, right. It's funny because Arya just like, she's like, I hate them. And she has like, the big Anakin energy in the
Uh-huh.
prequels. I hate all of them. I hate Prince Joffrey and the king and whatever. And he's like, yes, I know. I know. I hate them too. But, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
We've come to a dangerous place. We've come to a place where we have to stick together. And the quotables are here. Winter is coming. When the snow falls and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies. All the
All
winter
the
stuff.
juice.
That's all the Stark stuff, man.
That,
I
I
love
mean,
it.
that's why this chapter is like a really good chapter. Not only does it show the bond between Ned and Arya, not only does it have all of those quotes like wolf blood and when the white winds blow and all that, but it captures just the dynamic of Ned and King's Landing. Not only does he have to be a lord, he has to put up with like preteen daughters that are fighting with each other, which is a war like on its own.
Yeah. And it's pretty brutal stuff. And then all his duties with the council and stuff, like he has to deal with King Robert's drunken ass everywhere, just not doing shit. The council, like, Varys doing what he's doing. He can't really trust him because ain't nobody knows what the hell Varys be doing. Littlefinger tries to get in between. Ned tries to act like, trust me, I knew your wife and whatever. It's so much that he has to deal with.
Right.
And one of the things that I don't know if George was hinting at something in this chapter too,
Mm-hmm.
when Arya talks about, oh, like, I lied. I think it was Ned. It's like, you shouldn't lie about, where you got the sword or something like that. And he was like, I had to lie at one point. And then I connected that with, when he's talking about Lyanna and,
Jon Snow.
Jon Snow. I was like, this is Jon Snow. There is no way he's not talking about Jon Snow. I had to have, it was like, every once in a while we have to lie, one of those lies. And I'm like, I wonder what that could be. And it's like Jon Snow again. And it's like
and
brilliant work.
he said even the lie was not without honor.
Exactly. I was like, wow.
Yeah, honorable lie.
Subliminal messages, Ned.
Yeah, I definitely think that was some setup.
Yeah, that I definitely think that was a callback or something, because there's no way he's talking about Wolfblood and Lyanna and all that stuff, and he's not hinting at Jon Snow. And I think that's one of the most tragic things with Ned. He never gets to tell Jon, yo,
Yeah.
your my sister was your mother. Like it's a tragedy, Ned. It tragedy.
Yeah. I don't know. Ned Stark to me is just such a sad character that and I know I made videos like Ned Stark is stupid and all that kind of stuff, but really at the end of the day, I just feel like he was never cut out to play the Game of Thrones, and it didn't really have anything to do with him being stupid. It had him to do with him being like this honorable fool.
Yeah.
Whereas like he's the person that you would want, like you would want somebody with his honor to be your hand, but you need somebody like Tywin that's going to really secure you and hold you, or John Aaron, or one of the hands that are really good, that really know what they're doing. And I don't think he knew what he was doing. And it's kind of like just seeing him in King's Landing, knowing what's going to happen to him makes it even worse than like if you didn't know what was going to happen to him.
Right. I think he's more of a soldier. Like he's not cut out for the commanding,
Yeah.
the politicking. Like I think him and the king, I think Robert, King Robert, they kind of share that, where they didn't know what they were getting into. They thought, no, we're gonna overthrow the king and hurrah, And then like Robert just became a drunk and just did whatever he wanted to do. Ned was in Winterfell, and like they weren't, even Robert himself, he wasn't cut out for the politicking. He let the Lannisters, infiltrate all of his picks, all the people that he picked around him. It was just sloppy to begin with. And I think in the show, I had the opinion, Ned is pretty fucking stupid. What are you doing? Why are you gonna trust Littlefinger? Like, but I think in the books, you get a better understanding of why he does the things he does, because in a novel you can write from their perspective.
Right.
You can take what they're saying in their head, and like, so the honor thing is just emphasized so much.
Yeah.
And it's foolish, of course, but then you're like, what was he gonna do? I don't even think I don't think he was gonna, I mean, there was things he probably could have done, but I don't think he was gonna outsmart the Lannisters. Like, no way. Robert couldn't do that. He died too. So it was not only him, like, a lot of people.
It's like the people that, like you're saying, they're soldiers. They're not cut out for it. Like the people like Pycelle, Littlefinger, Varys, you wouldn't put them on the front lines and tell them to go battle Rhaegar on the Trident. So you can't expect you can't expect Robert to be in their position or Ned to be in their position and know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I think it was Renly who said, "Not warriors do not make good kings."
Yeah, I think it was Renly.
Yeah, and it's like Ned tried to like say, get, what was his name?
Stannis.
Yes, I'm forgetting names. Stannis. He's the rightful king, and it's like, yeah, he probably is, but like, you could just take the thing yourself. Like his reluctance to take power, I think is his downfall more than anything else. Like he didn't want the responsibility, and he tried to kick the football upward, and that just left him exposed, totally exposed.
Yeah. Well, the best part of the chapter is, to me, is that Arya gets to keep Needle. And Ned finds Needle. Arya won't tell him where she got Needle. She would never betray Jon Snow. She would never tell on Jon Snow. But Ned lets Arya keep Needle and sets her up with classes.
Yeah, that's where we meet Serial Pharrell,
Yes,
the
I
first
love
sword of Bravos.
him. I
Love him.
Serial.
I love his accent, like the way he speaks.
Hmm.
It's just so good to read. Love it.
Okay, so 3 days later at midday, her fathered steward, Vanpool, sent Arya to the small hall. The trestle tables had been dismantled and the benches shoved against the walls. The hall seemed empty until an unfamiliar voice said, "You are late, boy." A slight man with a bald head and a great beak of a nose stepped out of the shadows, holding a pair of slender wooden swords. "Tomorrow you will be here at midday." He had an accent. The lilt of the free cities, Bravos perhaps, or Mir. So this is Serial Pharrell, Arya's dancing master. And I feel like Serial Pharrell's quotes, like his one-liners, are some of the best one-liners in the books.
So true. So true.
Well, so he calls Arya a boy, but she's not a boy. And he does this thing where he clicks his teeth together all the time. I don't know what that's about, but there's a lot of conspiracy theories when it comes to Serial Pharrell.
Yes. Yes. I was really getting forward to this because yeah.
Yeah. So one of the theories that I wanted to talk about was, is Serial Pharrell Jackin Hagar? Have you heard that one?
Yes, I have. I think that's one of the first theories I actually looked into, besides the R plus L thing.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is Serial Jackin?
Yeah.
So the thing about there's like some interesting connections to Serial. So when Arya first meets Serial, Serial was once the first sword of Bravos. And I did like this timeline where I like go back and try to date when Serial Pharrell was the first sword of Bravos. And he would have actually been the first sword of Bravos when Daenerys was staying at the Sea Lord's palace.
Wow.
Right. So that was kind of shady. Like, oh, could he know Daenerys? Could he be a spy? Like, what's going on here? Like, could he be like one of Varys's people? So then the second thing about Serial Pharrell that made me think, oh, this is kind of shady, was the kindly man in Bravos. Arya, he says "just so" to Arya a lot, like Serial does. And when Arya's over there, she thinks of Serial when he says it. He was like, he sounds just like Serial.
Right.
So Serial could have been a faceless man.
That is interesting. I always found that interesting because it's like it is very probable. I mean, he is from Bravos. He's a first sword, the Sea Lord of Bravos. So there's already that instant connection there between the faceless men and him. He has excellent sword fighting skills, so presumably he's a very good killer, just like the faceless men are.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe it though. Like it's one of those things like, the JFK thing. It's kind of like that. It's like
it's possible, but like what narrative purpose would it have?
exactly. It's like I mean,
anybody you could say it could be a faceless man.
exactly.
Anybody.
Yo, even Ned, like one of the craziest ones that I heard relating to this was that there was a switcheroo of Ned. That Ned didn't actually die, and instead, like, some weird thing happened with Serial, and then Serial was actually Jackin, and then I was like, what? What are you guys even talking about? What? So that instantly turned me off when I was doing my research. I'm like, you know what? Just lay this one to bed, guys. I don't. If he is a faceless man, if he isn't, if he is Jackin, if he isn't, I kind of don't care at this point.
Yeah, like it narratively, it doesn't do anything for me.
But I do like the point that how did he get killed by Meryn Trant? Like,
well, he had a wooden sword.
Come on, Meryn Trant is a loser. Like, come on now. So
he tells Arya, Syrio tells Arya, this is one of my favorite quotes. The steel must be part of your arm, the bald man told her. Can you drop your arm?
but yeah, there's always this him like saying, boy, girl, you are a sword. That is all. Like it's kind of to emphasize in order to be very proficient in this sword fighting thing, you have to become the sword.
Yeah.
Like, the sword cannot be merely a tool that you use to kill people. It's a way of life. It's a way of doing things. It should be a part of you. And it's so interesting.
It reminds me of like those all those fancy quotes from Art of War. Like,
oh yeah,
to be your enemy, you must become your enemy. Arya's training sounds completely like what training would sound like. And she's not really learning to sword fight, even though she is. She's learning to water dance.
Yes, very important distinction. Because water dancing it's a Bravosi style, which I think is pretty nice. I don't know what inspired it. I think, like off the top of my head, I would think it's like, like a rapier, like that's what's inspired that. But I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But, it could be that. But that form of sword, the thin, light sword, of course, it would demand a certain style.
Yeah.
And I like that George actually adds that little flair to it. So it's not just sword fighting, it's water dancing. There's a difference.
Yes. So, there's kind of like an extra kind of gruesome meaning to it. Let me read this quote real quick. Syrio says, now we will begin the dance. Remember, child, this is not the iron dance of Westeros. We are learning the knight's dance. Oh, wait. This is not the iron dance of Westeros we are learning. The knight's dance, hacking and hammering. No. This is the Bravos dance, the water dance, swift and sudden. All men are made of water. Do you know this? When you pierce them, the water leaks out and they die. So, like, the dual meaning to water dancing is basically like the killer dance, because he's using water as like that's what men are made of.
Blood.
Yes. So it could be also called the bloody dance. So yeah, I really like that dual meaning. But yeah, that's basically Arya too. Like, she meets Syrio and she's gonna start doing water dancing lessons with Syrio. She has the argument with Sansa. She's questioning life. Like, she feels kind of like she's been lied to her whole life, because she thought like these men, they would protect her, and now she sees that no one can protect her, and she kind of picks that up really fast and really early. But overall, it's a good chapter. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think that was a thorough going through of that chapter. Very,
Yeah.
very good chapter. One of the best characters. Fight me.
Yeah, she really is, especially when we get into a feast for crows and a storm of swords. Yeah. But I want to thank you for coming on, everybody. You can I'll leave his Twitter link in the description box, and I will see you guys next week.